Welcome back, everybody, to another deep dive. This time, we're going to look at something a lot of you have been asking about A/B testing, but with a twist. You want to use it to analyze sentiment in text data.
Yeah, that's definitely a tricky one.
I mean, usually A/B testing is pretty straightforward, right? You've got like two versions of a website, and you see which one performs better, or like two different email subject lines, and you want to see which one gets more clicks. But you're trying to figure out something a little more nuanced. Like, how do you actually measure how people feel about something and capture that using data?
It's definitely an interesting challenge. I mean, you're trying to bridge quantitative data, those are the numbers, with qualitative stuff like, people's emotions or their opinions expressed in text.
So not just clicks, but like vibes.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, so to unpack all of this, we've got a case study from Crackling Cookies.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of them.
Yeah, they're known for like these really high-end gourmet cookies, like almost high-tech cookies, you know what I mean?
Yeah, their whole thing is the sensory experience. They're even experimenting with scent technology. And they only sell online, too.
No brick and mortar stores.
Right.
Wow. Okay, so they're developing this new cookie, but they hit a snag in the design process. They had two totally different directions they could go.
And I guess they both had pretty strong arguments in their favor from the engineers.
Yeah. So tell me about Design A.
So Design A was all about the soft, melty center, like perfect for frosting, really decadent, but maybe a little bit messy.
Oh, yeah. I could see that. And Design B.
Design B went in the opposite direction. So crunchy center, slightly spongy on the outside, more for that satisfying crackle and a cleaner bite.
Okay, so it's like
Yeah.
messy indulgence versus like a clean, satisfying crunch.
Yeah, exactly.
Classic dilemma.
Yeah, and they couldn't afford to launch both, so classic A/B testing came into play. So you release both online, same marketing push, see what happens.
Okay, so standard A/B testing so far.
Right.
But here's where it gets tricky. Now we've got reviews, we've got star ratings, we've got tons of text feedback coming in. How do we make sense of all that word data?
So this is where natural language processing, or NLP, comes in. So Crackling Cookies, they use something called the NRC lexicon. And what that does is it analyzes words, and then it categorizes them into 10 different sentiments.
10. Whoa.
Yeah, so you got like positive, negative, anger, anticipation, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, surprise, and even trust.
Wow. So instead of just saying cookie A got more 5-star reviews,
Yeah.
we can actually see if people were like joyful about the soft center or maybe angry about the crumbs from the crunchy one.
Exactly. It gives you a much more nuanced picture.
Wow. Okay.
And right away, the NRC analysis revealed some interesting things. Like, for example, Design B had a significantly higher proportion of words associated with positive sentiment overall.
Ooh. Okay, so crunchy cookie is in the lead. But hold on, before we jump to conclusions, we need to talk about something you mentioned earlier, Bayesian analysis.
Right. So most people are familiar with like frequentist statistics. That's your classic hypothesis testing, p-values, drawing conclusions based on how frequently something happens.
Right.
But Bayesian analysis is different. It actually lets you incorporate what's called prior knowledge, or like beliefs, into the analysis.
Okay, so like if I went into this believing that soft, gooey cookies are always better, that's my prior.
Yeah.
But then the data shows crunchy cookies are selling like crazy.
Right, so your belief gets challenged.
Exactly. So it's constantly updating your understanding as new evidence comes in.
Exactly, yeah.
But that makes me wonder, where did those priors even come from in the first place? Like if it's just someone's opinion, couldn't that like skew the results?
Yeah, it's a great question, and it kind of highlights why we need to be careful with what we use as priors. Simply asking people what they think they like. Like stated preferences that can be unreliable.
People aren't always accurate, even to themselves, right?
Exactly. People aren't always accurate or truthful, even to themselves.
So like what people actually do, their revealed preferences, are more trustworthy. Like they keep buying crunchy cookies, even though they claim to prefer gooey ones.
Right. Actions speak louder than words.
Exactly.
And the cool thing is you can actually combine both. So you can use like those survey responses as subjective priors and then update them with that hard data from sales and reviews.
So we're not throwing out those initial opinions. We're just like refining them with reality.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, this is getting really interesting.
It is. And in Cracklin's case, they actually did gather some subjective prior data before the A/B test. They did lab testing. They got feedback from like a smaller group.
Ooh, so we've got those engineers' initial beliefs from the lab tests about to go head-to-head with what the customers actually thought.
Exactly.
This is getting intense.
It is. But before we dive into like the results of that Bayesian showdown, I think we need to take a closer look at those NRC sentiments. Like, what were people really feeling about these cookies? And what might those emotions tell us?
Ooh, yeah, good point. That's something to explore in part 2. Okay, so let's get into those NRC sentiment results. We know Design B was scoring high on positive overall, but what other emotions were people feeling about these cookies?
Well, remember the NRC lexicon categorizes words into those 10 different sentiments, right?
Right.
Positive, negative, anger, anticipation, disgust, fear, joy, sadness, surprise, and trust.
Right.
So we can really get pretty granular with our understanding of like how people were reacting.
Okay, so beyond just like or dislike, we can see if people were like anticipating that first bite or maybe feeling kind of sad when the cookie was gone.
Exactly. Yeah. And it's those subtle emotions that can sometimes reveal a lot about the user experience.
Yeah.
Like, for example, one of the top words associated with disgust for Design A was actually, well, disgusting.
Ooh, harsh. A disgusting cookie, though. It makes me wonder, was the messiness really that bad?
It's a good question.
Or were people just using strong language?
Yeah, I mean, that's the beauty of this kind of analysis. It really prompts you to dig a little deeper.
Yeah.
Like maybe the marketing photos didn't accurately represent the texture, you know? So maybe people had these unrealistic expectations. Or maybe some people are just like super sensitive to sticky fingers. I don't know.
Yeah.
But the data gives us a good starting point for investigation.
Yeah, it's like a clue, leading us back to those original reviews to see the full context. So it's not just about the numbers themselves, it's about using those numbers to uncover those hidden insights.
Exactly, yeah. And sometimes those insights come from like the most unexpected places. For instance, Design B, the crunchy one, had a lot of words associated with trust.
Trust. Okay, that's interesting. That's not the first word that comes to mind when I think about cookies.
Yeah, right. It makes you think, though, like maybe that consistent crunch provides a sense of reliability, you know?
Okay, yeah.
Kind of a predictable experience that people find comforting. Or maybe it's the neatness factor, you know? No messy surprises, you know exactly what you're getting.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like with a crunchy cookie, there's no risk of a gooey letdown. You're trusting it to deliver that snap every time.
Right, exactly. And those subtle, almost subconscious associations, I think, can have a huge impact on those purchasing decisions. It's not always about just the taste itself, but that whole experience surrounding it.
Okay, so we've got this rich sentiment data. We know crackling cookies had those subjective priors from their lab tests. Are we ready for the Bayesian showdown? Like, how did those initial beliefs actually hold up against the reality of customer feedback?
I think we are. But you have to remember, right? Those lab tests, they really represent the engineer's opinions, like before the A/B testing, before they had any real-world data.
So it's like their starting point, their initial hypothesis about which cookie would, reign supreme.
Exactly. And Bayesian analysis, it allows us to kind of mathematically model how those beliefs are updated as that new evidence comes in. So it's like a dynamic process, not just a static conclusion.
So as those reviews poured in, those initial opinions were being constantly, challenged, reshaped by what those customers actually thought and felt.
Right, exactly. And the strength of those initial beliefs, like how certain the engineers were, that plays a big role in how much the data can shift their perspective. Like, if they were absolutely convinced that Design A was going to win, it would take a lot of negative feedback to change their minds.
Yeah, it's like a tug of war between what you think you know and what the data is telling you. And the Bayesian analysis helps us see who wins that tug of war.
Yeah, exactly. And that's where things get really fascinating. You know, we can actually quantify how much those prior beliefs were influenced by the data. Did the NRC sentiments confirm their intuition? Or did it lead to a dramatic upset?
Man, this is making me crave cookies and statistical analysis in equal measure. So tell me, which cookie actually emerged victorious from this epic battle of beliefs and data?
Well, before we reveal the ultimate winner, I think we should take a step back and kind of consider the broader implications of what we've learned here.
Okay, I'm ready for the big picture. What does all this cookie drama tell us about the power of data analysis?
Well, think about it. We're using A/B testing and NLP to analyze something as subjective as human emotion, and then we're incorporating prior beliefs using Bayesian inference. This is a really powerful framework for understanding not just what people do, but why they do it.
We're not just looking at sales figures, we're getting inside people's heads,
Yeah.
understanding like the emotions and associations that drive their choices.
Right, exactly. And that level of understanding, that's incredibly valuable, not just for cookie companies, but for anyone who's trying to create products or experiences or even messages that really resonate with their audience.
Okay, so are you ready to reveal the winning cookie? The suspense is killing me.
I am, but I think we should savor this moment for just a little bit longer.
Okay.
Let's take a deep dive into those lab test results, those subjective priors, and see how they stack up against that real-world data. That's where the real story lies.
Okay, so lab tests, subjective priors, spill the beans. What did the Bayesian analysis reveal? Which cookie won? The hearts and minds and stomachs of Cracklin's customers.
Well, the thing is, I think we've actually given you all the tools to figure that out for yourself.
Oh, sneaky.
We've talked about how A/B testing works, we went deep on NLP and sentiment analysis, and you know now how Bayesian inference can combine those prior beliefs with that hard data.
So you're saying like we've graduated from cookie detectives to like data analysts.
Exactly. So put on your analyst hat, right? And think about this. If the lab test, let's say, showed a strong preference for design A, but the NRC sentiment analysis, that showed higher levels of joy or maybe trust for design B, what would you conclude?
That's a good point. It sounds like there might be a disconnect maybe between what those engineers thought people would want and what they actually experienced. Maybe GUI wasn't as like universally beloved as they thought.
It's possible. And
Yeah.
that's kind of the beauty of this whole thing, right? Combining those subjective priors with the objective data. It lets us challenge our assumptions, make better decisions.
Even if it means like going against your gut.
Sometimes, yeah. And in this case, it might mean that Crackling Cookies takes another look at their designs, even if it means going against what they originally thought.
So to all our listeners out there, we're leaving the final verdict up to you. Weigh the evidence, think about those subjective priors, and decide for yourself which cookie should be the winner.
And remember, this goes way beyond just cookies, right? It's about this whole idea of beliefs and data, how they play together in like every part of our lives, from developing new products to marketing, even to like political polls or just personal decisions.
Wow, so much bigger.
It is. The principles we've talked about today can really help you see the world differently.
Love that. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive, everyone. Keep those data detective skills sharp. And remember, sometimes the most important discoveries are the ones we make ourselves.